Hello, everyone. We are live. Welcome to Collapse Times. Hey, Audra. I hope you're actually here. That would be awesome if you're able to make this, even though it's probably pretty late for you. You've been waiting for the Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump one, huh? What a bizarre world we live in. Um, yeah, we'll get to that. And I don't know. I don't really know if I'll have anything useful or unusual or new to say about it, but oh my God. Um, yeah. How's it going? How's this Mercury retrograde going for everyone? Um, as I have said before, I'm finding it very hard these days to keep up with the news, and I'm finding myself very uninspired to create this kind of astro-political content in particular, which is a really weird place for me to be because this is kind of all I have thought about, all I have wanted to talk about for years. And I was saying at the beginning of this year that I was feeling like I was finding my voice and coming online more with, like, I don't know, bringing different pieces of my analysis together. And I trust that that's going to come back around because what I realized is that Saturn is conjunct my sun right now at 25 degrees of Pisces. And, you know, y'all know how it is. Maybe if you track your transits, something is coming. You might know that something that is, like, usually pretty challenging is coming. And you can even, expect it to be challenging, and you still may not, like, actually see how that transit is manifesting until it's on top of you. And yeah, it's been, like, especially the past few weeks that I've just been feeling really heavy, really hard to keep up with basics in my life in general, and really hard to find inspiration for, talking about the stuff I usually love talking about. And then I realized that Saturn was just, like, coming into place, like, right over my sun, like it's stationing direct in another couple of weeks. So it's just, like, hanging out on the degree of my sun. Yeah, so I don't know, just if you guys can feel, like, a difference in my energy, if I seem unenthused, that's what's going on here. Um, yeah, I wanted to shout out Bridget, who might see this, who gifted me with some tinctures recently. And one of them is the St. John's wort. And this is supposed to, like, help depression. It has the energy of the sun in it. So I feel like this tincture is helping me deal with this transit. And also, I have Mars at 0 degrees of Taurus. So really, the way that I get anything done in my life is by just, like, sticking it out, like putting one foot in front of the other, even when it doesn't feel good or inspiring at all. So I'm just trying to roll with that. Saturn was conjunct my sun once in April, but it was like a shorter conjunction, at this time it's stationing, so it's hanging out there for longer. But it was also pretty heavy in the spring when that was happening, and I got off social media for a while, and that felt really good. And I also have been, like, off of Instagram in particular these past couple of weeks. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep chugging along, but I do apologize if you feel any letdown from my, like, lack of, I don't know, enthusiasm or effervescence or analysis. I just these days I, like, look at all the people that make content every day, like, whether it's astrologers or news people. Not that I'm actually looking, because I'm actually, like, not online, but I'm thinking about it, all the people that show up every day to metabolize the news and break down the news. And I just cannot right now, at least with the same enthusiasm that I try to usually muster. So just going to keep on bowing to Saturn, learning the lessons that Saturn wants to teach. Yeah, let's talk about the current astrology for a minute here. So we are now into Mercury retrograde. Mercury is in a pretty close to direct opposition to Uranus now. It's about to move back into Scorpio, right in time for the Scorpio new moon, which will happen on Thursday, the same day as Mercury is Cazimi with the sun. We also have right now the sun at 24 Scorpio, so joining this water trine that I've been talking about. These kind of very flowing, possibly very emotional energies. I think a couple thoughts I'll just share on Mercury opposite Uranus. So this Sagittarian energy that we've been in for a little while, with Mercury in Sag and then stationing in Sag conjunct Mars, so just kind of really activating a lot of this fire. I feel like, some of that may have died down. There's still some explosiveness, or you may notice yourself or others just being kind of temperamental, having that kind of Sagittarius fire that can go a lot of different directions at once. Also this stage in the Mercury retrograde, when you're coming in for the Cazimi, I find that it's maybe the most disorienting time mentally. And I'm going to get into a little bit of the science of Mercury retrograde in a minute here, which I actually meant to talk about last week, and I put it on the name of the video, and then I really only talked about the synodic cycle. I didn't talk about Mercury and the brain, so I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But I think that these, the few days before the Cazimi, are when the pathways, the patterning is really short-circuited. So it can feel pretty overwhelming to try to process new information that's coming in, or to try to put different pieces together. You may just be feeling extra scattered or extra unfocused. And then, Uranus just being part of the picture. I have been actually trying to think of Uranus as my anchor in this energy. And of course, we often kind of look at Uranus as being the kind of cause or the force behind upheaval or turbulence or explosiveness or fast changes. Those kind of things are associated with the Uranus archetype. But I'm trying to think of Uranus, the subversive nature of Uranus and the subversive asks that Uranus usually has for us. So you might, notice that somehow in your own experience of the Mercury retrograde, that in particular, the universe is asking you in one way or another to hold tight to a belief or narrative or, something that has a lot of meaning for you that really does go against tradition or against the status quo or against the just normal, uninterrupted, undisrupted flow of things. And so if that's helpful, you can think of that very true subversive thing that you're holding on to as your anchor in these wild energies. So it may not feel it may not feel like the most stable anchor in the sense of, okay, this is not something that I'm super familiar with or I feel super comfortable with, a way of looking at a certain situation, or a way that you're holding your energy in a certain situation and kind of not giving in maybe to what some tradition might ask of you or what some people might expect of you or whatever. So just holding on to whatever that subversive piece is can actually maybe ground you. I don't know. That's kind of what I'm finding. And with the water trine, I've talked about this, I think 3 weeks in a row now, but it just feels like not only is it surfacing emotions, and maybe in a good way, there's just this water flowing and it's kind of flushing out old emotions. But it also just creates this environment where energies change very quickly. And so I feel like my experience of this water has been that I will just feel one way about something one day, and then it'll be the next day, this whole other rush of new energy and new feeling comes in. I'm just like, whoa, how'd I get here? Like, kind of like if you just get into the river and you let yourself float down and suddenly you're far away from where you started. That's been my experience. And then Scorpio, yeah, so the Scorpio new moon and the Mercury cazimi happen at the same time overnight between the 19th and the 20th. So like early Thursday morning, on the East Coast is when the cazimi is. So basically that is going to be 2 new moons at once. It is not only the new moon of the lunar cycle, but the new moon of the Mercury cycle. And if you missed last week's live stream, you could check back for that to understand more about the Mercury cycle and its different phases. But at the cazimi, we're going to have, it's at 29 degrees or 28 degrees of Scorpio. So Mercury will be there as well. And then it'll all be opposite Uranus. So just continuing to bring in that kind of edgy, subversive tendency. And really, you know, if you're going to do some kind of ceremony for the cazimi or for the new moon, let Uranus's energy guide you. That would be my recommendation. Also, just noting that Scorpio is a lot more internal, introspective than Sagittarius. It keeps its cards a lot closer to its chest, and you just might find that your own temperament kind of shifts that way too over, you know, in the like after the new moon, Mercury being back in Scorpio. Yeah, there just might be more of an inward turn energetically coming up this week. But really good time at those new moons to anchor into lessons you're learning from Mercury retrograde, any changes that you're trying to make. Yeah, and I wanted to talk just a little bit about the science. Let me see. If I'm going to pull up the workbook again. Yeah, let me pull up this one page of the workbook. Sorry, I didn't prepare this. Well, this is all we were. So this is one page of the workbook. This is my Mercury retrograde workbook. If you did not catch last week's live stream, I have this workbook that I made a few years ago that has writing prompts for all the different phases of the Mercury synodic cycle. And I always forget to talk about it. I always forget to like try to sell it to anyone, but it's actually a really cool workbook. And it has a pretty good, concise, like summary of Mercury education from a lot of different angles. So the piece that I missed talking about last week that I wanted to get into a little bit is about Mercury and neurophysiology. Wait, I'm sorry. Is this even the right page? Yeah. Okay. So here's this really interesting scientific thing about Mercury retrograde, if you haven't heard it. So Mercury, aside from Mercury and Earth are the only planets in the solar system that have magnetic fields. Mercury's magnetic field is much, much, much weaker than Earth's, but it is measurable. And it's suspected that Mercury's magnetic field comes from Mercury just having a giant core of iron. And of course that like can't be proven because they can't actually go there because it's too hot. But that's the idea why Mercury has a magnetic field. So Mercury, if we think of it that way, it's basically this enormous magnet, right? And if we remember from last time, this other illustration, when we have the Mercury cazimi, it's the inferior conjunction In general, in Mercury retrograde, this is when Mercury is closest to the Earth, is during the retrograde and during the shadow periods. So when it's Mercury retrograde, basically we have this enormous magnet that is at its closest to the Earth. Makes sense, perhaps, that magnet would affect other things that are like affected by magnetic fields on Earth. For example, our technology, right? Technology is functioning using a lot of magnetic fields. So perhaps Mercury's magnetic nature actually directly relates to the fact that our technology tends to struggle during Mercury retrograde. Also, our own bodies are communicating through electromagnetic pulses, right? So the way that our brain and our bodies are communicating with one another. And there's also electromagnetic fields, like there's the heart field, right? That extends out from the body and that interacts with other fields as they like come into contact. So all those have magnetism in them. And perhaps it also makes sense that our own like brains tend to short circuit a little bit during Mercury retrograde, because maybe we're also being impacted on that level by this magnet that's extra close to the sun at this time. So I think that is really interesting. And then in particular at the time of the Cazimi, you have Mercury at its most close to the sun. And that is a really, really powerful time for doing some kind of ceremony to like reset your circuitry. So it's good to do releasing and intention setting around that time. And there's a whole like ritual, just a very simple ritual, but like guidance for a Mercury Cazimi ritual in this workbook. But yeah, it's a good time to both do something that's like helping you release whatever old beliefs you wanting to clear, and to like set intentions for the new ones that you want to pattern in more strongly. Okay, well, there's more that I could say really about that, but I'm not going to go into it anymore for now. But I at least wanted to add that piece a little bit. And, in general, Mercury has these themes of it's related to the brain and neurons and neural pathways, and Mercury is the messenger god, right? And our whole like neural system is functioning from little messages being sent back and forth from so many different places in the system and in the body. Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to add that in. And then honestly, yeah, I will just see what I have to say about the Epstein files. Before we get into that, I did want to mention that one other like just little interesting political thing I noticed was that the government shutdown ended right as Uranus was moving back into Taurus. And of course, the government shutdown ending is basically some Democrats like caving on what the Democrats allowed the shutdown to happen in the first place for, which was about healthcare. And I think it was like 6 Democrats like voted in the end the other day to like end the shutdown, and the Democrats didn't get anything that they wanted out of it and whatever. This is like, I don't have analysis for it. It just is what it is. But I thought that was interesting, especially since a huge thing that people are talking about with the shutdown was the SNAP benefits. And, Taurus being the sign of food and nutrition. Yeah, that just feels related. And I just wonder, I've thought for a while that there would maybe be some kind of a respite from the collapse when Uranus moved back into Taurus, because Taurus really does want things to kind of stay the same. It wants to maintain the status quo usually. And Gemini definitely doesn't. And yeah, that's just interesting timing that like, anyway, yeah, I don't have an opinion about like whether the shutdown is good or bad or who should be doing what differently. I think that there is no really going back to normal. There's no stopping the collapse, but they're just during this last little period of time in this liminal year of 2025. We might be seeing like one last attempt to like push the avalanche back up the mountain, basically. So, yeah, I don't know. I just thought that that was interesting. Also, that timing may not bode well in the long run, for people that are dependent on those benefits and other kinds of benefits from the state and federal governments. For when Uranus permanently moves into Gemini, we might lose a lot more around that time, because that is the ultimate intention of these people that, the effective accelerationists and these people that want to just take down the entire state. Okay, so Epstein, not way back, but I don't know, maybe a few months ago, I did one of these live streams that was kind of a primer on Epstein. So if you feel like hearing the basics of the Epstein story from me, if you don't already know it, you can find that live stream. And I just talked mostly about what I know from Whitney Webb's book about his history and his connections to the fake country and all of that. But I did not realize, and I don't think most, like the people that I listen to on this subject, I don't think anybody realized how tight Trump and Epstein actually were. And so in the past few weeks, there has been a lot of Epstein documents coming out. So there's been a combination of stuff that was released by the Democratic Party, basically by the House Oversight Committee, and some other emails that were hacked. I think there were hacked emails from Ehud Barak, previous Prime Minister of Israel, that had a lot of stuff with Epstein in them too. And so Dropsite News has done really great reporting on the Epstein Israel links. And if you want to look that up, you can just find it on their Substack. They've been reporting on that for the past couple of weeks. So before this latest tranche, as the word is, I think, of like 20,000 documents was released. That just happened in the past week. But Dropsite News has been reporting on this Israel stuff for the past couple of weeks. Now, as we see, there is like lots of Epstein conversation happening in the mainstream media. But how interesting, like not a word about his connections with the fake country. How fascinating. So I put a link in the description box to a website where it's just through Google, but if you look at the files from the House Oversight Committee, it's just a link to a Google file folder, and then inside of that are like lots and lots and lots of documents, and there's mostly like PDFs, and there's some videos too. And somebody set it up so that it's searchable now. So like I forget what the name of the group was, but so I linked a searchable version, and you can go in there and you can just look for any word or any name. So there's a lot of Bill Clinton, and there's a lot of Donald Trump, and there's a lot of Alan Dershowitz, and there's a lot of who are the other big ones, like Leon Black, and I don't know, there's all the big names in there. And Clinton's in there a lot, and I assume most of y'all have seen it because a lot of people are talking about this stuff, but there is just a lot of very incriminating stuff around Donald Trump. And perhaps the most bizarre little email back and forth is somewhere. Here it is. So you have to kind of read this backwards. This is like an email between Epstein and his brother in 2018. And you have to like start down here, and they're just having this like casual back and forth. And his brother asks how he's doing. Epstein says, all good, Bannon with me. Then the brother says, ask him if Putin has the photos of Trump blowing Bubba. And then they make a couple other jokes up here about Donnie. I don't get these jokes. Donnie T, Donnie D, I don't get it. But a lot of people are talking about this line. And it's interesting because at least from what I have found in my like very preliminary glance through of the documents, there's nothing else. There's nothing else that refers to this event taking place. Part of me wonders if this is like an inside joke, but I don't know. Maybe it's real. I used to have a friend who was this kind of emailer. He was not quite a boomer. He was like Pluto and Virgo, but like I feel like this is kind of a boomer style of emailing. Like there's like a ton of typos. They don't write in complete sentences. Like my friend would like do this thing where he would like, you know, he'd send an email. It'd be like, maybe the subject was hey, and then there was like one line in the email like asking a question, and he would just like communicate like that. And then, you know, you'd go back and forth with this like email with no subject line a few times, and then he would like lose that and like all the emails that are coming in, and then, you know, he'd just like start it over. Anyway, I feel like this is like a pretty boomer like way to communicate, but the style of emailing like does a little bit make me think that this could be a joke, but I don't know. I have no idea. Oh no, don't say my real name. Do you know my real name because you're a channel member and I showed you my real name, or have I just like let that slip on here? I don't like try to keep it a super secret, but I also like having a little alias in my online presence. So I just thought that we would look at Bill Clinton's astrology, first of all, because I've never done that before on here. Always interesting to look at someone new. And there's some interesting overlaps. We can look at all three. We could look at like Clinton and Trump and Epstein. We can also look at Clinton, Trump, and Putin. There's some interesting overlaps. But let's just start here with Clinton. Yeah, so Bill Clinton, heavy duty Libra, even though he's a Leo sun. He's got Leo sun, Leo Mercury conjunct Pluto, Leo Saturn. He's born just a few months after Donald Trump, so they have a lot of stuff in common. They both have this Uranus North Node in Gemini. And they both have some of their Libra placements in common, but Clinton has Venus and Mars and the ascendant all in Libra. And, you know, so this is giving Netanyahu, who also has a lot of Libra. And this is, you know, actually probably a lot of politicians. It'd be interesting to look more into that. But politicians do often have those Libra qualities of being able to make something nasty look or sound nice. You know, they are communicators. They are often bridge builders and diplomats, and Clinton definitely did a lot of that, definitely was a code switcher, definitely knew how to appeal to very different groups of people, definitely very good at reading the room. All of those are Libra talents. And then, of course, Libra can also be extremely two-faced, and it can use that talent to, you know, brown nose one person over here and then brown nose another person over here a completely different way. So yeah, super, super strong Libra. Of course, this also does tend to make a person like very relational, although I don't think that's actually true for all strong Libras. And then if we just look for a second at the transits right now, I just thought it was interesting that, you know, this Epstein stuff and Clinton's relationship to him, like this has been like bubbling out like over the past several months or more. And I think it's interesting that Jupiter has been transiting his midheaven, so the most visible place in his chart. And Jupiter can bring, you know, expansion of something you don't want expanded. So it can be like a magnifying glass or an amplifier, and it can reveal something that wasn't revealed before. So I feel like that's been happening for Clinton over the past little while since Jupiter's been transiting this part of his chart. And then Chiron has been opposing his natal Chiron, is opposing his Jupiter now. So like speaking about relationships, like, you know, be super interesting to be a fly on the wall of Bill and Hillary Clinton's bedroom, or perhaps their living room. I don't think I'd want to be in their bedroom really, but yeah, but this Chiron opposing all this Libra might speak to whatever is happening in their relationship right now. And so if we add in Trump, some of you might remember Trump also has a lot of Libra. This is all in his second house. And then Trump's Mars and Clinton's Sun are conjunct, which just kind of feels like very aligned with Trump blowing Bubba. I don't know. Mars, Sun, I don't know. Yeah, again, they have like almost the same Pluto. They have the same Uranus North Node. And then Jupiter also right now just stationed retrograde conjunct Trump's Venus Saturn conjunction. So that's also very much like exposing, revealing, pulling back the curtain on, you know, Trump and his very, very toxic relationship to the feminine. Let's see. So adding in Putin, okay, just for fun, real quick, we're adding in Putin because Putin has a lot of Libra placements too. And the almost the same Leo placements. Yeah. I don't know what all of it means, as always, but I do think all of this Libra overlap is really interesting. I know the Leo Mars Sun conjunction is pretty funny. Yeah, and I think that we're talking about, I don't know if Putin really matters in terms of what's in the Epstein emails, but like we're talking about people, very vain people here, very like proud of their ability to manipulate and fool and code switch and all of that. I mean, honestly, Trump, he doesn't have any personal planets there. He's not actually like a good code switcher and good at reading the room. His Libra, it's all in the second house. It just comes down to vanity. I feel like with Trump, these placements, he's also got like he's got Juno there too. So this is very related to his vanity and also his like maybe some kind of dysmorphia around like the color of his skin, like how orange his makeup is. I've talked about this before, but I found a clip one time from someone who had like previously been Trump's makeup artist, and she was saying how he just didn't know when to stop. Like he would keep wanting the makeup artist to go like more and more orange. And so that's very like Chiron, Jupiter, Libra in the second house. Just like very cares a lot about appearance, but then is actually like really cringy. So that's all I got, guys. I don't have a song. I didn't even bring I have one deck of cards here, so I probably will pull an archetype card. But this is really all I got. But ask me questions if you have any here. And I'm always very open if anybody has suggestions for like what you want me to talk about on Sundays. If you want me to look at someone's chart, celebrity chart or a politician chart or a plutocrat chart or whatever, or a city's chart, just throw out suggestions, because I feel like in my Saturn conjunct Sun depressed state, I might need like a little help. Jeff is searching the Epstein emails for me to make sure that I'm not in there. Thanks for doing that important work. Questions? Thoughts? Any random charts that I should pull up now? I'm really sorry I didn't have more exciting things to say about Trump and Epstein. If you have more questions, or if there's any, other parts of the chart that you want me to touch on, let me know. And if not, it's just going to be an early night, and I am not going to be sad about that. But I will pull an archetype card for us. Next week, we'll get back to the regular cards. You're talking about coming up, Audra? Transits for the New York Stock Exchange dates just for this next week or so. Is there a natal chart for the New York Stock Exchange? That would be really interesting to look at, actually. I've never thought to check that out. Yeah, I'll definitely look that up. I'm not going to pull it up right now just because since it's a chart I haven't looked at, I would probably do a lot better if I look at it in advance. But if you want to say any more information about why you're thinking those dates, let me know. And yeah, I guess it'll be already past next week. Well, no, we'll be right in the middle of those dates that you said next week, so I could look that up. But yeah, if there's a actual chart for the New York Stock Exchange, that would be really interesting to look at. Do I think Epstein had an astrologer? Well, I don't think he had had a regular astrologer that he saw, because in that birthday book, there was that page that was his astrology, and somebody, maybe Ghislaine, but I don't think it was actually clear who had given him that. It seemed like that was something that somebody said, I asked my house astrologer and she sent me this, and then they had the whole layout of his chart, the graph version of his chart. So that was a gift from someone, but the way that it was phrased made it sound like he probably wouldn't know about astrology. So it didn't sound based on that he was personally into it. Yeah, and from what I understand, it was all Nancy Reagan, too. That was the one working with the astrologer, giving her husband behind-the-scenes advice. Yeah, cool. I will look up the New York Stock Exchange chart. That's probably really interesting to look at and to, check the transits of. Okay. What archetype is going to help us this week? The eternal child. Didn't we get this last week? Wait, let me check. I didn't post them last week, and I don't know if I even took pictures of them. Yeah, it looks like maybe not. I didn't even take a picture last week of the cards that I pulled. Sorry, I've been so not on top of that either. But I could be wrong because I did those horoscopes last week too, so I might be thinking of something I pulled for that. But I don't know, the eternal child, I kind of feel like we got this last week. If anybody remembers, let me know. The eternal child. The inner child, the child of joy. The eternal child is connected to the timeless, ageless, and infinite aspects of life. It is radiant and fearless and seeks joy above all else and at any costs. It struggles being bound to an aging body with physical limitations in a world that demands attention to detail and logistics. The eternal child wants to nix all rules and responsibilities and go beyond what others say is possible. Sounds like Uranus. It wants to return with plenty of friends to the land of the free, where divine wine and creativity pour from the earth and sky. We all want to sip from the well of eternal youth, and this makes the eternal child naturally popular, perhaps even famous. The eternal child glimmers. It reminds us of what is possible, what is magical about this precious life. This archetype is so spirited that when its appetite for life isn't satiated, it seeks spirits and substance elsewhere. The eternal child struggles with addictions of all varieties. Celebrity culture is based heavily on this archetype, as is the phrase live hard, die young, and the series of artists and musicians who died at age 27, approaching their Saturn returns. Yes, I remember reading that last week now. So I don't know. Why do you think that this is coming up twice in a row? Does this have to do with the news? Does this have to do with Mercury opposite Uranus? Like, it is kind of Sagittarian energy as well. It does not feel like a Scorpio new moon at 28 degrees energy. That feels like very old soul kind of energy. But right now, before Mercury makes its way back into Scorpio, we still have some of that fire, some of that kind of spirited, passionate, possibly out of control kind of energy around. Well, that's interesting to get that 2 weeks in a row. So hopefully there is some useful message in there for all of us. So it'll be interesting to see what the energy feels like next week. Next week, by the time we're here next week, the sun will have just moved into Sagittarius. Venus will be close to that water trine. Yeah, well, we'll see what things feel like. My friends, I appreciate you so much. Thanks for understanding my ups and downs and energetic fluctuations. Before I sign off, I will shout out my email list one more time. So if you're not on it, first of all, when you get on it, you get a free copy of Astrology for Apocalypse, which is my ebook that is now a retrospective. It was written in 2021, talking about the long-term outer planet transits, particularly Pluto and Capricorn and Neptune and Pisces and Uranus and Taurus. And now those transits are almost completely over, so the book is a retrospective. But anyway, you get it for free if you sign up for my email list. And if you're on my email list, you will be the first to hear when I do my early bird sale for my 2026 roadmap readings. And I already did the super early bird sale, so you missed that. But there will be another one very soon, and I'll maybe share more about these readings next week. These are kind of one thing that's actually like exciting for me, giving me a little bit of inspiration right now, because I do really love doing these readings. I have a format that this is probably the 5th year that I've done these roadmap readings that use your, talk about your astrology and how the different transits are going to impact you. And then I also have a tarot and oracle card spread that looks at each season of the year and breaks down the energies for the season. And then I like go through and talk about how the cards and the astrology correspond. So they're pretty cool readings. And I've done one for myself, the like oracle and tarot spread. I've done one for myself each year the past 4 or 5 years, and they're pretty like mind-blowingly accurate. So if you want some personal support, a lay of the land for your 2026, you might want to invest in one of these readings. And I will be announcing the sale sometime around like Black Friday, but maybe not exactly then, but probably I'll do something like at the end of this month. So keep an eye out if you're interested. Other than that, I think we're finished here. As always, I'm so grateful. Yeah, I'll be back next week. Maybe someday I'll be back with a real video. We'll just see how the inspiration flows. All right. Many blessings, y'all. Good luck. Enjoy your Mercury Kazemi. I'll see you soon.